Don't have a textbook, go ahead and go to the back room and get a textbook. Alright, this is the introduction to the next unit we're covering, which is over the stages of human development. If you want to go ahead and turn to page 426, that's where we're at. You'll need the textbooks in a minute. We're going to break down, on your handout it has a chart, we're going to break the stages of development into 4 stages. But before we get to that, can anyone tell me what these human stages of development are? It's not on page 426, so. Yeah, Steven?
Infancy, childhood,
Yeah, those are right, but what are those stages? What you go through as a human as you grow and develop. So the reason we break them up into stages is because different things happen at different points. The definition for it is it's distinct periods of life that are characterized by physical, cognitive, and psychosocial changes. So physical changes are the easiest to see. Like, what's something different about an infant that's different about a child or a toddler? What changes physically? They get older, bigger. They get bigger, right? Physically, they grow bigger. Bones grow, your body grows, your skin stretches as you get older, those types of things. Your heart gets larger, your lungs grow, all of those things physically grow. Okay, what is cognitive changes? Your brain, yeah, your brain develops. Can a infant speak? No. What is an infant's thought process? Go. Yeah, basically, right? They think, I'm hungry, I'm sleepy, go to the bathroom, right? The older you get, is that still your only thought process? No, it develops as you get older. And then the same thing with psychosocial. What does that sound like? Break it down into 2 words. What's the second word? Social. So you develop, like, the ability to socialize. If you look at kids' friendships, what's different about 5-year-olds that's different from the friendships you all have? There's more depth to it, right? There's more than just we play together or we get along or we go to school. There's environments outside of that where you do things. It's a deeper relationship where you build trust, you make connections, those types of things. So the developmental stages are distinct periods of life characterized by those 3 categories. So the stages, really, there's more than 4, there's 8, but we're breaking it up into 4 stages. When we go into the next, like breaking it down stage by stage, we'll cover like the individual stages within it. Those 4 stages are infancy, childhood, adolescence, and adulthood. Infancy is just 1 to 12 months. Childhood is 1 to 12 years, or sorry, 0 to 12 months, not 1 to 12 months, it's a typo. Childhood is 1 to 12 years, and then within that, there's the 3 different stages of childhood. So there's early childhood, middle childhood, and late childhood. What would be different about each of those 3 stages? 1 to 3, what are 1 to 3-year-olds doing? Playing, right? That's pretty much all they do. Once they get to around like 5-6-year-old range where they start going to school, where they start learning. So there's learning before that, but oftentimes it's done with parents, grandparents, those types of things. They might go to daycare, but their interactions are a lot more simple versus a child that's 4 to 6 years old. Then late childhood, 7 to 12, it's like leading up to the developments you begin to go into as a teenager. And these are not like hard set numbers. Like, it's not like once you hit 13 years old, you're an adolescent. Like, some people hit puberty early, some people hit puberty later, some people grow and hit a growth spurt at 18 versus some people hit one at 12. So I see differences in height, differences in shape. People develop differently, so it's not a hard set, like this is the way it is, or at this exact age. And then adolescence is 13 to 19 years old. Again, that's not an exact number. And really, they say you don't stop growing for most people until they're into their early 20s, but they kind of break it up at 19. And adulthood is 19 and up, which adulthood is broken up into 3 stages, like 19 to 40, and then 40 to 65, and then 65 and on. Okay. We've talked about nutrition previously. You're gonna have to think about this for a minute. Does nutrition play a role in how your body develops? So think of the 3 categories. If you need to look at your handout, it shows you those 3 categories on there. There's physical, cognitive, psychosocial. How does nutrition play into those developmental stages? Or just first, does nutrition matter? Yeah, it's a pretty easy answer, right? Obviously nutrition matters, but why?
Because you need it to grow.
Okay, yeah, for the simplest answer, you need it to grow. If you don't feed your body, it's not going to grow. Okay, what else? Physically, why is nutrition important? Okay, so think of stages. For an infant or a child, why do they have to eat? Physically, they have to grow. Promotes bone, muscle, organ growth, nutrients from different vitamins, proteins, calcium, vitamin D, iron. They're all essential for not only building like your body to grow, but also for tissues and bone development. So those are some of the physical things with infancy and childhood. What about adolescence? So that's where you're 12, 13 years old going into puberty.
What about it?
Why does nutrition matter for physical development in that next age range? Okay, how much do you eat on a daily basis? You don't have to tell me exact things, but how much do you eat?
1 meal.
1 meal? 3 times a day? Okay, how much does an infant or a child eat? An infant eats quite a bit, but it's milk, it's a different type of food. Do you eat the same thing an infant eats? Do you eat the same thing a child eats? Why not? Would you keep growing if all you had was milk? That's all you ever had? No, your body has different needs as it grows. Once you hit puberty or that adolescent stage, the nutritional needs your body has increase. The times where you eat the most in your life typically are in adolescence because your body is growing the most rapidly other than an infant. So 0 to 12 months old, they grow rapidly, and then as a teenager. That's why like some people, you see them go like when you leave school in the spring, they're like 5'3", and then they come back at the start of next year and all of a sudden they're taller than everyone. It's because adolescence is one of the stages where your body grows the most rapidly. So in adolescence or puberty, nutritional needs increase to support the growth spurts and hormonal changes that your body goes through. Once you hit adolescence or like teenage years, your body starts to experience hormones that it was not producing before. That's part of growing and becoming like an adult, turning into an adult. Your body develops and changes. Then finally, as an adult, why is nutrition important for physical development? Balanced nutrition helps maintain the body's functions and prevents muscle loss. So you keep growing up to a certain point into like early adults, you're still able to grow, be strong. You're not going to grow physically as much, but you're still able to maintain what you have. Once you get past a certain age, it's much harder to stay in the same shape you are, or that you were as a teenager, as an adolescent. Okay, cognitive growth. Why is nutrition important? Just like physically, if you don't feed your body, is your brain going to function the same? No, what's going to happen? What's the only thing your brain's going to think? Food, I'm hungry, or it's going to shut down because it doesn't have the nutrients it needs to function. So in pregnancy, into the first few years of life, nutrients are super important, especially like omega-3 fatty acids, iron, iodine, and zinc are essential elements for brain development. If your body does not get those things early in life, it develops much slower. So your brain function is going to be behind because it didn't get the nutrients it needed. That's why they have to feed infants so often, because it's such a smaller it's not as nutrient dense as eating an actual meal. Milk is what they need, but it doesn't have the same stuff that like eating a meal today would have. So they have to feed every so often so that their body continues to grow and develop. What about for, what would be a problem or a deficiency that this could cause if you don't eat properly? Starvation, what happens to your entire body?
You get thin.
You get little, right? Your body begins to shrink, And then mentally, you actually can regress. Say your IQ is like a 135. It can actually begin to go down if your body's not being fed. So deficiencies in these nutrients can lead to learning difficulty, they can lead to lower IQs, they can lead to delayed cognitive and motor skills, and then not just deficiencies in those things, but then regression. Not properly nourishing your body can lead your body to decrease brain function and in ability. In other words, do you remember in elementary when you had to take the standardized test for like a week straight? Okay. What did they always tell you? What did your teachers tell you before you take the test? Get up and brush your teeth and eat breakfast. Why would they say that? Because your brain functions better when it's fed. Like we said a minute ago, when you're hungry, that's all your brain is focused on is I need food. It's hard to focus when you're hungry. Finally, emotional and social development. When you're very hungry, are you the most pleasant person? When you're hungry, you begin to get angry. You're angry, right? How does that affect social interactions? Pretty bad, right? Someone might do something that normally wouldn't make you mad, or they're just joking, but when you're extremely hungry, you might snap at them when you didn't really mean to. Nutrition can influence your mood and your behavior. Deficiencies in vitamins can actually lead to fatigue, irritability, concentration problems, so it'll negatively affect the way you interact with other people. Okay, why is this important? For what we're talking about, why are understanding developmental stages important? You might say, I don't really care about understanding the different stages, but there's a reason why we cover it, or why it's part of the curriculum that you're supposed to cover in health. So why would it be important to understand that?
So we can apply it to our life.
Okay, how?
I'll take better care of body.
Okay, it helps you to take better care of your body. Yeah, that's one way. You know that as your body grows into different stages, your body has different needs, which means you have to provide the nutrients it needs for that stage. Why else? All of you that are alive have a mom and a dad, right? Okay, what if they had no understanding of this? Do you think you would be where you're at right now?
No.
Probably not, right? Okay, so one day, most of you are probably going to be parents, right? And if you don't have an understanding of this, you don't understand that you have to help your child, support them in how you can, give them the proper nutrients, those types of things. You have to know that so that you can set them up for success, so that they grow, they develop. Why else? Okay, let me phrase it this way. Why would it be important to have an awareness of what's normal for a certain age?
So you know what to feed.
Okay, think in the scenario of a kid. Not just so you know what to feed them, but what if, say your child's 3 years old, 4 years old, and still isn't speaking? What does that tell you? Okay, yeah, so there might be a problem, they're not developing right. So maybe it has to do with nutrition, maybe they're not getting the vitamins they need to for the brain to function right, or maybe there's some other problem and we need to do some kind of therapy or something like that to help them progress because they're behind. Just because you start behind, does that mean you're always gonna be behind? No, that's why you do those things to help get to where the norm or what normal would be for that age. If you don't know what's normal though, you don't know that a person's behind in that sense. Why else? There's one other big thing. When you experience a lot of change in life, typically how do you feel? Not just physical changes, but like say you had to move to a new school, how would you feel? Uncomfortable probably, right? Anxious, stressed maybe, those types of things. What would help in that situation? Okay, friends who what? Support you and understand, yeah. So knowing what's normal to go through helps you be a better friend because you have an understanding of what problems or changes they may be facing. The problems you have in life right now aren't the same as a 5-year-old or a 10-year-old or even a 25-year-old, right? You experience different things, but you all experience similar problems and things that you face. Because you're going through that together kind of at the same time, that's why you have friends that are your age, because you're going through similar things. So the problems they face, you're able to relate to them better than anyone else because you're going through something similar. So all those things, we covered most of these, but it's important to understand the developmental stages because you know it's typical for each stage, so it's important for parents, teachers, caregivers, friends, older siblings, because you know what's normal for that age. The awareness of developmental milestones lets you detect problems or delays early so that you can try to address that. When there's a problem or when there's something wrong, the earlier you address it, the better it is. Knowing what's normal helps you to do that as soon as possible. Then you're able to understand how other people think and feel at different stages, which helps you empathize or relate to them and better communicate with them at that point. Learning about the developmental stages helps people reflect on their own growth and experiences or to know what's coming, what I need to kind of prepare myself for. I've experienced this, those types of things that have happened. Now I know this is probably what's next. And then finally, understanding human development provides a map for supporting other people. So most people don't like change. They like to build habits, they like to build routines, but you can't live your whole life doing the exact same thing the whole time. Understanding the developmental stages helps you know what's coming and better plan for it and prepare for it. All right, the handout that you have has the 4 stages: infancy, childhood, adolescence, and adulthood. We're gonna work through the first one together. I'm gonna show you how you're gonna map out these things. Again, this is just an introduction to the 4 stages. We're gonna cover each one more in depth as we go through this unit. But the first stage we're gonna go through, infancy, and we're gonna work through it together. Does anyone remember what the age range for infancy is? Yeah, 0 to 12 months. So it ranges from birth, or 0 to 12 months, about a year old. Again, that can be a little bit longer, it can be a little bit shorter. Everybody develops at a different pace. But we're gonna list key traits for each category. So what's a physical change that would happen during infancy? Okay, yeah, you get bigger. Infancy is the time where you grow the most rapidly. If you've ever seen a newborn, they're pretty small, right? Say you have a younger sibling or a younger cousin, or you're an aunt or an uncle. The first time you see them, they're tiny. Then you see them 2 weeks later and it's like, holy cow, last time I saw them, they were not that big. You don't still grow at that same pace today. Infancy is the time where you grow the most rapidly. What else physically changes? 0 to 12 months, what do babies start to do?
Crawl around.
Yeah, at some point they start to crawl or develop that ability. So they're learning how to use their body. At some point, have you ever seen when a baby first learns that they have hands and they like stare at their hands or like stick them in their mouth, stuff like that all the time? They're learning how to use their body. And then not only do they learn to crawl, they learn to sit, those types of things. So write down at least one of those physical traits for infancy. Next, you've got mental. Mentally, what changes for an infant? When they're first born, do they have any idea what words are? No. Typically, around the age of a year old, if not a little bit before, they can say a few things like what? What's a baby's first words most of the time? Mama or dada, right? So they're beginning to develop an understanding of word, or that sound goes with some type of context. Not only that, but they begin to associate words with objects. So if you just take a baby and hand it to, let's say Andrew, you had a child. If I walked up and handed that baby to Nomi, would the baby know that Nomi is not her mom? Right. They begin to develop this understanding physically of what someone looks like. So they begin to understand that. And then finally, very basics understanding of speech. You can typically ask once they get to around a year, hungry, or a lot of times we'll teach them sign language for like more or all done. They'll teach them those things because they have an understanding of it, even though they may not be able to speak yet. They begin to put a correlation of what words are. And then finally, social. Does an infant that's a newborn have many social skills at all? No. What do they develop before they begin, or as they get to around a year old though? Most of the time, they begin to develop the ability to say mom or dad, so a few words. And what else? How do they express emotion?
By actions.
A lot of times actions, or as an infant, they cry, right? So, as a parent of a newborn, how do you know when the baby's upset? They cry. And then you have to figure out what it means. Are they hungry? Do they have a wet diaper? What are they frustrated about? Because the only way they have to express it is to cry. Again, this develops as it goes on, but they cry to express emotion. What do they do when they're happy? Laugh, right? So they begin to develop the ability to express emotion in its most basic form. And then they show strong likes and dislikes. Have you ever seen a baby try new food for the first time? Have any of you? Okay. Generally, can you tell pretty quick whether or not they like it? Because what do? They either like spit it out or push it out with their tongue, or you give them some and you try to give it to them again and they push it away. They're like, no, I don't want that. But if they like it, a lot of times there's like a smile, or you see them start to like kind of lick and not really chew because they don't have teeth, but kind of move it around like crazy, and you can tell whether or not they like it. So those are the most basic forms for infancy. Again, we're going to go into each stage more in depth later on. Okay, next stage, childhood. This one you're going to have to use your books on a little bit. I forget what page it's on exactly. Oh, yeah. What page is that? 427. Okay, if you want to look at page 427, look in the book a little bit. What are physical traits that a child 1 to 12 begins to develop? Or 1 to 12. So anything in that range. It can be in the 1 to 3, so like early childhood, middle childhood, or late childhood. What are some of the physical changes? Yeah, so most of the time in that age range, 1 to 12, they start to participate in things like maybe sports. They play a sport for the first time. Or in that big time frame, they begin to go to school. And they get a good grade on a test. What do they do when they come home? Mom, Dad, look what I got. Look what I did. Did you watch me play? Did you see me do that? They take pride in those things. So yeah. That's more of a mental or social, but they take pride in accomplishments. What about physically?
Voice starts to change.
Yeah.
They can walk.
Yeah, better walking, so motor development. You can write at least one of these traits down for each age. Have you ever watched like kindergarten basketball, soccer, baseball? Are they the most athletic? No, there's a lot of what? Tripping and falling, because they haven't learned how to control their body yet. And then when someone hits a growth spurt, what do you see them do all the time? Trip quite a bit, right? So when I was in elementary, in 3rd grade was the first year we played like organized basketball as a team. My parents would make jokes that we would trip over the lines on the court, even though it's a painted line that's not actually raised because we tripped and fell so much. But it's just learning how to use your body. You have to learn how to use those motor skills. Mentally, we said pride and accomplishments. What else for mental development?
They become eager to try new tests.
Yeah, so they want to learn new things. A lot of times after they get over like the fear of something new with school, a lot of them are excited to go to school, right? Why? Because they get to learn new things, they get to do new things. Okay, what about socially?
Form stronger bonds with people.
Yeah, so it's more than just we play together. So stronger developments of bonds between people. What else?
They learn to play with the others.
Yeah, so to learn to play with others. Okay, we've covered 2 of the stages. On your handout, you've got adolescence and adulthood. Chevy, Landon, Darion, and Andrea, you'll get in a group of 4. Use your textbooks and work on adolescence. And then Jackson, Steven, Nomi, and Jasmine, you'll get in a group of 4. You're gonna work together to get adolescence as well. Once you get all of those, then we'll work on individually on adulthood. So you get at least 1 or 2 for each stage. So for adolescents, get 1 or 2 physical traits, 1 or 2 mental traits, 1 or 2 social traits. You can go ahead and move to your groups. So for adolescents, we'll flip a little bit towards next unit. There you go. Adolescence starts on page 436. So you're gonna have to flip a little bit. Each person in the group write a different trait. So a different physical development trait. So you'll have to communicate together to get different traits. Same thing for mental and social.
I said they had a growth spurt. Go find one.
This is the stage y'all are in. So it doesn't just have to be the book, but what are changes y'all have gone through since you've been 12 or 13? Yep. Yeah. So they don't have to just be positive things, right? There's things that you learn to do on your own that you have to be taught aren't the correct thing to do. So they can be changes that aren't necessarily great. Peer pressure can be good or bad, but. Once you all get one for adolescents, move on to mental. Mental is gonna be the hardest one.
Yeah, I'm trying to figure out. So let's look at
Oh, to come up with 4 different ones. Yeah.
Oh, all right.
Okay. Yep.
I put attitude change for social.
Give you another hint. When you're in your teenage years for social development, what do people start to get for the most time? For the first time, a boyfriend or girlfriend, right? So they develop interests outside of just friendships during adolescence, those types of things. Alright, you can go back to your seat, work on adulthood by yourself. You got just a couple minutes. next unit, the next lesson in there. There you go. Page, what is that? 442. And it can be early, middle, or late adulthood. It doesn't necessarily have to be early adulthood. It can be any of the three. That's quick. They don't have to be different than that. Okay, so again, it doesn't have to be growth, what happens physically. As you get older.
That would be great.
Yeah. That works. What other people say old people do all the time today? No what? Okay, sure. What else? Do they remember things as well? Maybe something a long time ago, but they start to forget, right?
Are you taking this up?
Yeah, yeah. You're gonna use it for just a second. You can even think of like your parents or grandparents. What are changes that you've seen as they've gotten older? Do they work here as hard, or do they remember things as well? Those types of things. Because it's developments too. It may not necessarily be a growth or maybe a regression, but it's a physical change. Yes. Sure. Explain why a little bit. Oh, you're talking about physical? Sure. It kind of starts here and here, but yeah. Yeah, that works. Yeah. Vision what? Yeah, right that way. There, I need that done. You got them, Joseph? Okay, what are some of them you listed for adolescents?
They develop other interests.
Develop what?
Other interests.
Other interests? Okay, what do you mean by that?
Like, thinking like what they wanna do after they get out of school or something.
Yeah, sure.
They understand different points of view.
Okay, yeah, so they begin to see more perspectives than just their opinion on something. What else?
Their voice deepens.
Okay, voice deepens, your voice starts to change, it's part of puberty and hormones. What else?
They find the need to fit in.
Okay, yeah. Most of the time the kids really care how they dress. As a teenager, a lot of people typically dress a certain way because it fits with what everybody else is doing, right? Or it goes after a style they're trying to achieve to look like someone. What else for adolescents? There, what's one of them you put?
You get taller.
Get taller? Sure. What else you know?
With social, like, they start acting like who they hang around with.
Yeah, so you're influenced by the people around you. So you start to act like them. If somebody talks a certain way or uses a word all the time, the more you're around them, you start to use that word or talk that way. Okay, what about adulthood?
Lose memory easier for mental.
Yeah, for mental, once you get to a certain age, your memory starts to get worse. What else?
Vision gets worse.
Okay, vision gets worse.
Loss of
Care for
friends.
others.
Start what?
caring for others.
Yeah, typically, once people reach adulthood, they begin to have a perspective of it's not about me, but maybe once they have kids, they begin to start to care for other people more. What else?
Lots of friends.
Lots of friends, why?
Because like when you get older, you don't have as much friends as you did when you were a teenager.
Yeah. Part of that too goes to you don't have as much energy, so you don't go out and do things near as much, so you don't interact with people as much. The other thing is, when people get older, what happens to the friends they did have? Say late adulthood.
They die.
Yeah, some of your friends start to pass away. What else? What's a physical change?
They develop intimacy.
Okay, so they get weaker, what'd you say?
Develop intimacy.
Okay, intimacy, yeah. Most people in adulthood, they find someone they're gonna marry and want to spend the rest of their life with. So that's a different type of relationship than what kids have, or even teenagers. It's a different level of intimacy. What else? Let's get two more.
Physical.
Any of them?
You start making more well thought out decisions.
Yeah, so you think more rationally. That's a good one. So you begin to think things through more. You start to do that as a teenager, right? Like, I remember this story very well from when I was a kid. My mom always told me not to touch the iron because it was hot, right? Well, I didn't know what the word hot meant. So what did I do one day? I took my hand like this and I stuck it on the iron after she'd ironed clothes. Well, what did I learn pretty quick?
It was hot.
That it was hot. I learned what hot was, but I didn't know, and I wanted to learn. Okay, as a teenager, if they said don't touch it, it's hot, do you think you would have made the same decision? No, probably not. You might would have tried to ask, hey, what does hot mean? Or you might have looked it up on your own. So you start to think things through more rationally. You're able to think things through, if I make this decision, what's gonna happen? And then really when you get to an adult is when you really begin to think things through better. But one more.
Start getting wrinkles.
Okay, wrinkles, yeah. What did you say, Jackson?
They understand and appreciate the life more.
Yeah, so there's an appreciation for things. A lot of times, kids don't really think about where stuff comes from, right? They have food, but that's because mom and dad got it for us. Didn't really think about where it came from. As a teenager, if you had to work a job, you start to appreciate things a little more because you understand everything costs money, right? Somebody had to work to provide those things. Not just that, but you start to appreciate friends. You start to appreciate the things they do for you. When you have a problem, or when you have a flat tire on the side of the road and don't have a spare, you appreciate when somebody comes and picks you up, right? So you start to develop an understanding and those relationships where you're willing to do things for people. Even though it may inconvenience you, you know they would help you in that situation. Okay, so to refresh, what are the 4 stages of development that we're covering?
Infancy, childhood, adolescence, and adulthood.
Yes, infancy, childhood, adolescence, adulthood. What is the age range for infancy?
12 months old.
Yeah, 0 to 12, so birth is 12 months old. What about for childhood?
1 to 12 years old.
1 to 12. What about for adolescence?
12 to 20.
12 to 20, 12 to 19. And then adulthood is,
20 to death.
yeah, 19 or 20 to death. Again, childhood and adulthood have like smaller stages within those, which we'll get into when we cover childhood and adulthood more in depth. Why is it important to understand?
To teach our kids about it better.
Okay, yeah, so that one day when you have kids, you're able to help them get through it. Why else?
Because you're gonna reach that point in life.
Yeah, because one day you're gonna get to that point. It's kind of nice to know a little bit of what to expect. What else? If you understand what someone's going through, you can help them out or relate to them better. Yeah. One more. One more reason why it's important. What you think, Andrew? Why is another reason it's important? Doesn't have to be anything super complicated.
I don't know.
Can you help her out, Naomi?
Like, makes you more understanding
Yeah, it makes you more understanding, not just people your age, but younger people or older people. Once you've gone through something, like even if it was 5-10 years ago, you understand the changes, they're the problems that they're facing, and you can understand and help better. Whereas you know, okay, that's probably what they're dealing with. I'm not gonna overreact or get mad because they don't really know how to handle it. All right, and then tomorrow we'll cover, we'll go into childhood more in depth. So we'll kind of break down, infancy, not childhood. We'll cover infancy more in depth. We'll go through like some of the finer details of like what exactly happens, not just generalized things like we wrote down today. You can take your handouts and go stack them back on the corner of my desk, and then you'll get those back tomorrow.